Hello and welcome to my podcast. I'm Andrea Gaughan, a knitwear designer that lives in Asheville, North Carolina. And it's been a few months since my last podcast, so I have quite a few things to share with you. But I'm going to try to make sure this doesn't go too long as well. So first up, I want to jump right in and talk about what I'm wearing, which is my Wildflower Pullover that just came out at the end of last month. And I'm so happy with this. I think this is probably the most ambitious design I've ever done so far. And I'm really thrilled with how it came out, and the testers did really excellent jobs on all their versions, which was a joy to see. It was a really long test knit because it's a fingering weight all over colorwork sweater. So I think it was probably one of the longest processes between when I finished mine and then when the release actually came out. So the whole thing kind of felt like an extra big process, but I'm so happy to have this design finally out in the world. And I'm gonna try to show you more of mine. I can't back up too much further, but it has this really cute, not too complex flower design. And as you can see, I did 2 color stripes, but you could work the flowers all in one color or in as many different colors as you want. And the same motif continues along the sleeves, which have shaping, and the entirety of the back is also covered in the same design. And let's see if you can see. Yes. So there's a bit of shoulder shaping, even though this is a relaxed drop shoulder sweater, still without any shoulder shaping, especially with all the floats and everything going on. There can be like excess fabric in the armpit without any shoulder shaping at all. So there is some shoulder shaping in the back, and nearly the entire sweater is worked in the round with the exception of that little trapezoid at the top of shoulder shaping. And that is achieved through including steeks, which is my actually first time ever steeking. And if you're not familiar with what that is, it is when you knit something in the round and then cut it open so that it can lay flat, and you reinforce those edges where you're going to cut it so that when you cut your knitting, it doesn't unravel and it will stay in place. And this is one of those techniques that people get very intimidated by, but I think a very large amount of people, including myself, were way more intimidated by it than was justified, because there's really great tutorials. There's multiple ways that you can do this, and what I always do is with a new technique like that, especially something that if done wrong could ruin your whole project, I always practice it on a swatch. So I have a little swatch here to show you exactly how this looks like. So this swatch was actually knitted in the round, and then you have a couple extra stitches. Let's see. So if you can imagine, this was originally together, and then the motif stops, and you have a couple stitches, and these are called your steek stitches. And they alternate between main color and contrast color so that they're all kind of caught in there. And then some people in a tutorial, this is frequently done in a contrast color so you can see it better. Yeah, it's actually really difficult to see, but this edge line is actually a row of crochet stitches that were done along. So see how there's, the ends are peeking out here, but this very end stretch does not have any loose ends. That's because it's actually a chain of crochet that was done along the steek stitches, and then that's done on both sides, and that reinforces the stitches, so when you cut up the center, it completely doesn't unravel. So you can see I can stretch and move this, and that edge, these little ends might pop out, but they're still plenty secure in there. And then when you pick up stitches, you pick them up along this line. And so this is what you would actually see in the sweater. And so in the sweater, this is like right here where you would pick up stitches and then knit an armhole out. And then the same thing is done at the side of the neckline. You pick up stitches and then work the collar. So this little flap here of the steek stitches is completely hidden inside the sweater. So if you can see, that's exactly the same thing as a swatch, and it just flaps around here. You can use whip stitch just to quickly secure that in place. I haven't found, it kind of wants to automatically fold over itself like this once you pick up the stitches, so it hasn't bothered me or anything, so I haven't bothered whip stitching them down. Some people, especially if it's a cardigan and you might actually see those flaps, will put a strip of ribbon or even like knit a little placket kind of thing and put it over just so that it looks more visually appealing than this. But since this is a pullover and no one is ever seeing the inside besides me, I didn't bother with anything like that. But all this is to say, if you have not tried steeking yet, I strongly encourage you to give it a try. Well, if you're like me and you enjoy learning new techniques, I think it's a really, really cool technique that just opens up so many different possibilities of what you can knit, and allows you to knit things in a way that's much more enjoyable. So in this sweater, it's started bottom up so that you get super comfortable with the color work, just in the round, normal, nothing special. And then at the armholes, you start those steek stitches on the two sides, but then you continue knitting in the round, and then it will be cut open later for the armholes. And then again, you add in the same kind of steek thing for the neck hole, but you've already done color work for a long time, so you're comfortable with it. And knitting color work in the round, I think, is much, much more pleasant than knitting it flat. I know sometimes patterns will be written so the whole thing, like a color work cardigan, is knit flat. That is definitely not my preference. I'm sorry, I'm using a new lens, so hopefully the focus is going well. It seems like it's tracking pretty well. But if I'm glancing over at the screen, it's because I'm trying to see if it's in focus. Yeah, so anyway, once you finish the body, you seam the shoulders. Just that little bit of shoulder shaping is worked flat, like I said. And then I even put an option in there if you really don't want to even knit that tiny section flat in color work. You can just leave the flowers out there, or you can knit it all in main color and then use duplicate stitch to put the flowers on. I don't think knitting color work flat is that horrible that I would rather do a whole extra step afterwards or leave it blank, since the kind of the whole look of the pullover is having the all over color work. But I just want to put that in there, so if you really wanted to, you could knit this without knitting any color work flat at all. But I think probably that section took me like a half hour or less, so it's a very, very small amount. And then once you've done the steeking, the arms, the sleeves are knit in the round with decreases and collars picked up, and all of that is done just as usual. So once you're done the body and done the steeking, that part is completely done. Yeah, so the method I used is called the crochet reinforcement method, and I used Brooklyn Tweed's tutorial and just did exactly as they said, and it turned out wonderfully. They feel very secure. I'm using Brooklyn Tweed's yarn. I will show you. I don't have a skein of it, but is Brooklyn Tweed's Tones Light, and I have a whole color card of it. And this is a really gorgeous yarn that is fingering weight, and it is 100% US wool that is sourced, scoured, spun, dyed, all within the US, which I think is really cool. Brooklyn Tweed's, like, kind of their big thing is supporting the domestic wool industry and wool processing industry, and that's something I really love about them. And this is their beautiful shade card. So how this base works is there's two base colors, this light gray and dark gray, which this light gray is the main color I used in my sample. Is that looking nice in focus? And then every color that's dyed is dyed on both bases. So there's kind of two sets of colors, the light colors and their complementary darker colors, which I think is a really interesting color palette as a result. And of course, I love the base color scheme. Brooklyn Tweed tends to have very like natural, earthy colors, and I love that. That's exactly what I go for. So the two colors I used were this Hollyhock, the darker one, and Persimmon, again the darker one. So I think to get a good amount of contrast, if you use the light gray and then some of the darker colors, or the opposite, use the darker gray and then maybe some of the lighter colors, would be really good contrast. And then of course you can just mix and match between the colors themselves, but having the dark versions and the light versions kind of gives you some more options of contrast levels for color work. And yeah, so I use Brooklyn Tweed's steeking tutorial and their yarn. The crochet reinforcement method works really well on this yarn because it's very, it's soft, like it's not itchy at all, but it has kind of a more rustic texture to it still. Excuse me. It has a little bit more grip. It's not smooth is what I would say. And I think that grippy wooliness is really necessary for the crochet reinforcement to work well. But there's an alternate method called the sewn reinforcement method, which is what I intend to try next time I steek, just so I've practiced both myself. And instead of working a line of crochet stitches to reinforce your knitting before cutting it, you take a sharp needle and sew a piece of yarn up and then down. And as you do that, you actually pierce through the strands of yarn, instead of like if you were, most of the time when you weave in ends, you would not pierce through the yarn. Well, you can weave in ends that way, but anyway, piercing through the yarn makes it so that they're really not going to unravel or go anywhere. And then that is a really good method if you're using a really slippery yarn, or definitely if you're using a superwash yarn. That will make sure anything is nice and secure. And in the pattern, like all my patterns, I have a link page where I link my recommended tutorials. They're ones I've watched through. Either they're the ones I used myself if I learned the technique recently enough that I actually remember what tutorial I used, or if not, it's one I've looked through and made sure that it explains the technique clearly and shows the way I did it. But not only did I link Brooklyn Tweed's crochet reinforcement tutorial, I listed a really solid looking sewn version, and I think several of the testers used that and said that that worked out well for them. I think I need to wrap up talking about this pattern, but like I said, I am really proud of it and I'm happy to be wearing it right now. It has gotten really cold again. We had some gorgeous days here in Asheville over the past couple weeks, but last night it froze, and it might be one of the last freezes of the year, if not the last one, we'll see. But this was perfect for this morning. Like I said, it's fingering weight, but especially with the floats, it's like a nice warm but not too heavy sweater. And this pattern is available for purchase right now. Like I said, it came out just a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to link below in the description of this video both the Ravelry pattern page and the pattern page on my website. And both of those, like for all my patterns, include links to a page that has a thorough documentation of the sizes and how much yarn you need, and then also links to the tester showcase. So I try to provide a lot of information up front. If you're interested in design, you can see a lot of information before making your final decision. So check that out. And if you're interested in knitting this pattern one day, but I think there were a lot of people that were like, I would love to knit that one day, but it seems too complex for me right now. One, you can do anything you set your mind to. I love jumping into new techniques, but I would probably recommend doing some other colorwork projects before you do a colorwork project with steeking. But if you're interested in doing this one day, you can always add it to your Ravelry favorites. That does a lot to help push the pattern in Ravelry's little algorithm thing, if you like it but aren't going to purchase it right now. And I'm going to move on to talking about the next thing, which is what I have been working on. I shared a tiny teaser of this in my Instagram stories, and I feel like I got one of the most amounts of likes as quickly after sharing that story as maybe ever happened in one of my stories. So that made me really excited. I hope that there was barely anything done at that point. I hope when people see the real version, the excitement continues, because I am very excited about this design. It is currently a little damp, so I have it still laying on blocking mats on the floor. It is a checkered vest. So this is the front panel. So as you can see, a V-neck, and it will have armhole edging and neck edging, and then the bottom edging is done in the panel. And this is just the front. And then the back I knit all in one color. This is even more damp, so it's really, I'm meant to lay these back out nicely. You can't see much going on, but it has shoulder shaping and matching armhole shaping. And I put in the pattern everything you need to know if you wanted to also knit the back with checkers. But I like a lot of Argyle vests will just have the patterning in the front and then one color in the back, and I liked that. And it just makes the back extra fast to knit, and kind of, I think, makes the front pop even more. But you can knit the back in checkers as well if you like to. So this is knit up in Rerum Natura's Gilliatt base, which I have already knit another vest pattern in, which was my South Slope vest. Let me go grab that real fast. It's just in the other room. I'll be 1 second. Okay, sorry for not editing that out, but I had introduced a bit more editing into my podcast, and then I feel like the whole process was getting too much, so I'm going back to just one cut, one take, no edits, so you guys had to hang out for a second there. But this is my South Slope vest. This is a pattern that I released in January of this year, and it is knit up in the same base, Gilliatt. And I love this. This was my first ever vest pattern, and I really enjoyed this base, and I've really enjoyed wearing this. I also knit a second version, and so I just started basically pretty soon after I finished that one. I got the yarn for this, and it took me a bit to wrap up some other spring summer designs and get this one on my needles and knit up. But this is now my second vest pattern in that base, and I really love, it's a worsted weight yarn, and a vest knit up in worsted weight yarn is just such a fast and satisfying project, especially after, I mean, I knit this quite a while ago now, but I feel like I've had quite a few designs that I've been working on that took quite a while, and well, for each one of them, I think it was plenty worth it. I really like to have variations in kind of that workflow. Like, I don't like to do a lot of designs in a row that all take many dozens of hours to knit. I don't know how much time this one has taken, but I think I just cast it on like maybe 2 weeks ago, and I was knitting on several other things at the same time. And then my hope is, I have a pretty strong fan going on these right now. My hope is that I can get these dry by later today and seam them together and put that edging on, and then I want to have a test call on Friday. So if you are interested in the possibility of test knitting this design, then keep an eye out for that. The very best way to make sure you don't miss a test call is to sign up for my newsletter, which I will also link below. So let me see. I think this is 100% merino yarn. It just says 100% wool here, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, it says merino. The whole label's in French, but that sure looks like it says wool merino. I don't know what that last word is. Okay. Anyway, this is a very soft yarn with great stitch definition, which is excellent for intarsia, which is the technique used to knit these checkers. As you can see, there's no floats in the back as there would be for color work. So how you do that, if you're not familiar with intarsia, is you have actually a separate little bundle of yarn, which I've prepared my little bundles for a second version, like this. And so here, my version, my size has 6 checkers across, so you have 6 little bundles, and you knit a checker from one, switch to the next one, knit a checker from the second one, etc. And every time you change colors, all you do, it's like one of those techniques that once you're doing it, you're like, this is so simple, this is so cool. All you do when you change colors is you just wrap them around each other when you change, and that creates these little lines and loops. But on the right side, the stitches sometimes look like, you know, the sizes might be a little different because of that loop right there. But it creates a gorgeous, nice transition between the two colors that's very smooth and natural looking. And I officially love intarsia again. With this being my first steeking project, this was my first intarsia project. I again did a little swatch. Ooh, I'll show you my cute little teeny tiny swatch. Well, I changed some things for my swatch, so my swatch looks a little funky. But I just did this little swatch to practice, and I was very happy with the color combination and how the technique looked, and jumped right into this. And I think this is definitely a technique that this would be a great, if you have not tried intarsia before, this would be a great project to try it for the first time, because especially there's not even a chart, it's just you set up your colors in the first round, and then you keep the transition in the same spot for 20 rounds, and then you swap the colors. So there's no, you can focus all of your energy on the technique itself, and you're not following a chart where you need to be also moving the line and creating shapes. And I found it extremely enjoyable. I really just like knitting stockinette, but it had that satisfaction of just the back and forth and back and forth in stockinette, but with a little extra interest. And I liked the like potato chip style, like, oh, just want to finish one row of checkers and get to the next one. So this was extremely enjoyable knit, so much so that, as I said, I am going to be knitting a second version in these two colors of the same base, Gilliatt. And I have the back panel, oop, I have a needle, darning needle in there, I guess. The back panel knit up to the armhole split so far. And so this is going to be the main color, and then I'm going to use the light color for the checkers on the front, just like I used the light color for the white checkers on my original sample. Okay. So, oh, and as I mentioned, so this is seamed, and once again, I've been designing for several years now, and I really like to keep doing new techniques. And I know some people will be like, I do color work yoke sweaters, but part of the joy to me in knitting is to be like seeing what can knitting do, and doing mosaic knitting, stranded color work, textures, cables, lace, but it means I'm constantly doing patterns that are, this is my first time doing this thing, because I did knit for a while before jumping into designing. But I did like cables, I done a zipper, I done raglans, I had done like button bands. So I did kind of what I feel like were like fundamental things, but there's still a lot of techniques that I had never done, like intarsia, steeking, mosaic knitting. So I am teaching myself those techniques as I want to design patterns that use them. But that is part of what keeps designing and knitting really interesting and engaging for me. I really like the process of learning new techniques. So not only is this my first design that uses intarsia, it's going to be my first seam design, but really the seaming in this is so little. I haven't done it yet, so I might be a little preemptive, but I have had some drop shoulder sweater patterns where you seam the shoulders. So the shoulders are going to be seamed exactly the same way as a pattern like that would be, that you just seam across the shoulders. And then the only other thing you have to do is sew some straight lines together with, I think it's called mattress stitch, which is the basic side to side seaming method. And I've watched a video tutorial for that, and I decided not even to do a swatch version because it seems really basic. But I think when a lot of people say they don't like seaming, once you get a sleeve involved and you're sewing a curved surface into a curved surface and you have this whole armhole situation, that's when it can get a lot more challenging. So this bypasses that. There's no sewing curves together. You're only doing a couple straight lines. And even that, it's really not much distance at all. And you can do intarsia in the round. I did a little practicing of it, but it seems way more fiddly than is necessary, and doing the intarsia color work flat is very straightforward, especially since I didn't even want to have it in the back. And that way you are, even if you were doing both the front and the back in intarsia, you would only be working with, for this size, 6 colors at a time, instead of you would have to be having 12 colors all at once for the back. And a note just on how I graded it. So the checkers stay the same for every size. So larger sizes have more checkers as the front gets wider. Instead of, I thought it would change the look of the design way too much to have the checkers get bigger. So I think starting with size medium. So I label my sizes A, B, C, but it's roughly equivalent to like extra small, small, medium. So I think around a size medium, it becomes 8 checkers, and then around a size 2XL or 3XL, it becomes 10 checkers, and then I think the very largest sizes, which is like a 5XL, does become 12 checkers. So, but even with 12, knitting them flat back and forth is much simpler. And I watched quite a few videos about how people did intarsia before I did it, and I feel like I found the best way, which is kind of ridiculous to say because I've only done it this way, but I watched some videos where it looked very chaotic and not fun, and then I watched some videos where the process looked very nice, and I was very happy with the method that I used. Well, not that it's different methods, it's just basically how you manage your yarns. So I found a tutorial where you make these little bobbins just by wrapping yarn in a specific way around your fingers, and then they have this little center pull mechanism where this just comes whoop. I'm not going to pull more out because it doesn't go back in, but you can just keep pulling and it comes gently out, and this keeps its integrity until when almost all this is pulled out, it kind of deflates a bit, but you want to make this as tight as you can so that it keeps some good friction on the center. And so all you do is when you need a little bit more yarn, you do one more boop, and so they are attached, but there is never, you don't have too much yarn ever all exposed at one time. And then these are like just enough weight to put a tiny bit of tension on this yarn, but it's not really heavy and pulling. And then this is the key thing that I feel like really worked well, is you just only worry about the one that you are knitting with, and the other ones, they can get as jumbled up as you like. I feel like the videos where people were trying to keep everyone in their place the whole time seemed like way too much effort. But if you just let the other yarns do whatever you want, and then whenever you get to a new yarn, then you can just do a quick little, if it got twisted around something, kind of just pull it out and then knit with that one, and then worry about the next one, and only worry about one at a time, and just let the other ones do whatever. And as long as you don't have too much yarn pulled out, if you had like 6 feet of yarn pulled out for each one, they're gonna get extremely tangled. But if you just have, you know, a foot or two pulled out for each one, they're never gonna get that tangled. And I actually, part of my motivation for knitting a second one is I want to try to record some videos, probably just for like Instagram reels, not like new tutorials, because there are existing tutorials that are good. Just to show my process, because I felt like I got it to work well. Not that I invented anything, I just spent a lot of time seeing how other people did it first. And yeah, so again, I just want to encourage people to try it who might be intimidated by the, oh, I can't imagine working from 6 yarns at once or more than that. But a lot of people have done this technique and they figured out the way that works, and this way works really, really well. So like I said, that test call is going to be coming out this Friday. I'm going to be kind of knitting along with the testers a little bit as I make that second version. I'm already scheming about more versions. We'll see what's realistic, but a cool thing about this is that because of the way intarsia works, you don't have to do a checkered method. Like if this was a smaller checkers and stranded color work, you have to make it checkers, but you could do every single checker a different color and make it more like a patchwork quilt style, where there's just all different colors all over the place. And I really want to do that with like a kind of all colors being warm colors, like pink and red and orange and yellows all mixed together. I think that would be really beautiful. I already have several different colors of Gilliatt that I think would look nice, but then I think I want to add like a couple more in to get a wider variety. But we'll see if I have time for that. So stay tuned. Let's see if that is able to happen. Okay. Let me get talking about the next thing. I was going to talk about the design that I'm working on writing right now, but all I have right now is a swatch to show you, so I think I'll hold off till my next podcast to show that when I actually have some of it cast on, because I see we're already like a little over half an hour, and I wanted to keep this around 40 minutes or so. So the final thing I'm going to talk to you about then is a pattern that is going to be released next week. So I wrote down the day because I'm always scared I'm not going to remember the right date. So it's going to be Friday, April 18th, or a week from this Friday. And this is my Mountain Laurel tank. And this is a cable and lace sleeveless top. Oh, I called it Mountain Laurel top, not tank. I was kind of deciding between the two. So it has these relatively simple cable and lace patterns paired together, and they just run over the whole front, and the back pattern matches exactly, and during the armhole shaping it is all those lace columns only. And so you can see it has shoulder shaping to get a really excellent fit in the shoulders, and a crew neckline, and then it comes right out to the edge of the shoulders. And I think that this has, I should look that up, either has 0 or 2 inches of ease, so it's close fitting but not really fitted, not super tight or anything. And this has worked in one of the most luxurious, gorgeous yarns I have ever used, which is the Wandering Flocks Cotton Lino. This is some of the yarn I've left. You can see it's really smooth and has just this gorgeous sheen to it. Let me show you the label. It's all crinkled up from being inside the yarn ball. So that is dyed by the Wandering Flock. I believe this is a custom milled base for them. And it has 30% organic cotton, 30% mulberry silk, 20% linen, and 15% baby alpaca. So it's called cotton lino, a cotton and linen, which is a pretty common blend. But in addition to the cotton and linen, it also has silk and alpaca in it. So it's, and I think they did, I'm like at a loss for words. I think they did an excellent job getting the proportions great on all these. It has like, it feels like it has the best of every single one of those fibers. It has the like cool, perfect for summer qualities of the cotton and linen, and then it has some drape from those two and also the silk, and then the silk gives it that gorgeous sheen, and then the alpaca is just like, I guess just extra softness. I wonder how this base would be if it was the same base but without the alpaca. I think that since that's the smallest percentage, that's the one I can kind of least imagine how it would be without the alpaca. But I've worked with lots of cotton linen yarns, so it's compared to a cotton linen yarn, it's much softer and squishier, and it doesn't have any of the crispness that like a 100% cotton and linen yarn would have. But it still has the gorgeous stitch definition of them. As you can see, it just really highlights every stitch, and you can see the motifs very clearly. Yeah, so I'm a big fan of that yarn. I already am like, I really want to make more designs in this yarn, so I'll probably be doing more in more designs in this yarn in the future. This color is burnt sienna, but the entire lineup of colors from the Wandering Flock is just gorgeous. They just do an amazing job choosing perfect shades of color and then perfect color palettes that just go really well together. And a lot of times they'll have colors that I didn't really expect. They have a lot of like really kind of pastel to neon type colors, and then they'll have more neutral colors, but the shades and color combinations they do of those different ones, like they work really cohesively together. In this exact base, actually, Jessie May released a design called, I think the 1993 tee, I want to say. It was a baby tee, and it used every single color of this base that was out at the time, and they in stripes, and they just looked amazing together. So I'm always really impressed by that. I love choosing color combinations, but I feel like that can be one of the most challenging things. So I always particularly admire dyers when I can see the love and thought that went into curating their color combinations, because they just work so beautifully and cohesively together, without being some kind of like obvious scheme, like all of them are pastels, because, you know, if you have everything is neon or everything is pastel, they tend to look like a whole. But when you have more neutrals and brights and pastels and they all go together, it's very impressive, and they do an excellent job with that. So this is a sport weight yarn. I don't believe I said that. So this is a really great, it knits up a bit faster than if this whole thing was fingering weight, but it's still plenty lightweight enough for spring and summer, and it feels breathable, but there's enough heft to the fiber as well that it has like really nice drape. It doesn't feel like it's insubstantial, I guess. Okay, so this design, as I said, is going to come out next Friday, and I say this with every release. I do release discounts, but they are just for my newsletter subscribers. So if you are interested in this pattern or any of my future patterns, make sure you sign up for my newsletter. And as I said, that's linked below, and you will get a coupon for 20% off every new release. And that is usually good for the weekend that release has come out. And then also, if you are a new newsletter subscriber, you'll get a 10% off discount that you can use for any of my published patterns. And you can use it for one purchase, but you can put as many patterns as you want in there. So sometimes people will get that coupon and then buy like 6 patterns at once, which I'm like, you do that. Anyway, I didn't intend to be like, oh, you can only use it once so that people would get that many at once. But anyway, just a little extra bonus for when you sign up, that you get a 10% off discount whether or not you want to use it. And then that never goes bad, so you can always just save that for the future. You don't have to like use it within a certain amount of days of signing up or anything. But yeah, I just do the release discount for my newsletter base only because there's so much how do I say this? As a designer, I have to work to actually get people to see my patterns, and I try to put stuff on YouTube, on Ravelry, on Instagram. I have a TikTok and a Blue Sky now. Those things are kind of fickle. So I feel like my newsletter is my core of where I know I'm going to be able to send an email and it will get to people. Even that is not guaranteed. And because my emails are promotions, they'll go to the promotion folder. Unless someone like specifically saves it. I think if you save my email to your contacts or open my email every single time, the algorithm might put it in your normal inbox. But it's basically a more secure way of being like, oh, I send this information. The people who have said they want to get it will actually receive it, as opposed to on Instagram, they could just never show it to people, and they could show them ads instead. So I'm really trying to prioritize, if people are interested in my design work, making sure they sign up for my newsletter so that they will be in a place where they'll actually see my new releases as they come out. And then I also save my newsletter for like bigger things like test calls, releases, if I have classes coming out, or if there's some kind of like special event like a class. I don't just, send out emails all the time. So I probably end up sending an email like twice a month-ish. And something I've been thinking about, but I had to put a bit of time into kind of setting it up and making sure it had a structure I really liked, is transitioning that to a weekly email and have it be more newsletter style. I've seen some people like Ashley from Sorilla doing that, and I really like that. I love, and I'm signed up for hers, and then it's not weekly, but Lydia Morrow has a newsletter that she'll share a wide variety of things like her writing. She's a knitwear designer if you don't know her, but she also does other forms of art and writing and shares that all in one newsletter. I was kind of thinking about starting my newsletter to be more of a weekly thing, and then sharing what kinds of things I've been working on, and then maybe a little bit about other parts of my life like gardening and hiking and other things like that, and maybe like books I've been reading or movies I've enjoyed. But I'm gonna see if I can kind of test the waters on that, and see if that would be something people would enjoy reading. But I know I like the work of, I really like that style. So I kind of think about what would I actually like from a creator, like to receive or follow from a creator that I like. So anyway, if that's a style that you're really interested in, let me know. I'm kind of just starting to gauge interest in something like that. And I'm going to try to be back to doing podcasts. Like I said, editing can end up taking a lot of time, even just doing really basic editing. And so frequently gets to be the thing that I'm like, I just don't have time for this week. So I'm gonna go back to just doing a little bit more simple, basic editing, and keeping them under an hour, and hopefully that will make it a lot more realistic for me to find the time to fit these into my schedule, because I do really enjoy, I feel like I get some of the best feedback from people when I'm sharing more in depth about my thought process behind the designs, things I've been working on. I really enjoy hearing your feedback in the comments, and then when I have gone to like in-person knitting events like Rhinebeck, I have had people come up to me and say, oh, I watch your podcast on YouTube, even though I have such a small following. Like, those people are there and they've talked to me, so I feel like it is reaching people who are interested. So I'm gonna try to be back here on probably about once a month at this point is what's feeling realistic for me. So next time I will have a finished vest to show you, and then like I said, that design that I'm writing right now and I have just a swatch, I should have it at least started, if not finished. And then I have a couple releases planned of designs that are in testing right now that I didn't want to spend too much time talking about today, but are going to be coming out in the next few months that I'll be excited to share some background with you when those releases get closer. Okay, so thank you so much for hanging out and watching this, and I hope you have been having a good time with your knitting and doing your best. I know, especially if you live in the US like me, it's been tough times, and I feel like more than ever I've been really enjoying my knitting and crafting and creating as an outlet where I feel like I'm doing something positive and I love amidst a world where a lot of things are not going well. So I hope for all of you that you are able to find things like knitting or whatever it is that brings you joy and peace amidst everything that's going on. So thank you, and I will check in with you again in a month. Bye.